Let's put aside the fantasies of becoming a billionaire for a moment today. I want to wrestle with a very specific number. That number is not $1 million. It is not $10 million. That number is $20. Zero, if you mention this number to people on Wall Street, they might laugh at you because that might just be the cost of the wine at their dinner. But if you ask me, or if you ask Charlie Munger, we will tell you this $20. Zero is the most important, the most difficult, and the most decisive sum of money in your entire life. Why 20,000? Why not 10,000 or 50,000 because of the intersection of physics and finance? There is a concept known as escape velocity. Imagine a rocket trying to fly into space. In the first few minutes of ignition, it burns more fuel than during the rest of the entire journey combined. Why? Because in that phase, it must fight against the strongest gravitational pull of the Earth and the thickest atmospheric resistance for most people, the zone between $0 and $20. Zero is your gravity well in this zone. You are not moving forward. You are fighting for your life. We have to be honest about this when the number in your bank account is below 20. Your life is actually in a state of extreme fragility. Nassim Taleb talks about anti-fragility. But at this stage, you are completely fragile. Let me paint a picture of this life for you. I know this life because before I became the so-called Oracle of Omaha, I observed countless people struggling at the bottom. When you only have $1,000 in savings, every small accident in life is a catastrophe. Your car breaks down and the repair bill is $500. This isn't just an expense. This means you might not be able to pay rent this month, or you might have to turn to a payday lender. And once you take that high interest loan, you are sucked into a vicious cycle. You have a toothache, but because you can't afford the dentist, you choose to endure it as a result. A year later, a small problem turns into a major surgery, and the cost goes from a few hundred to a few thousand. You see, this is what I call the gravity of poverty. When you have no money, the cost of surviving in this world is actually higher banks charge you maintenance fees because your balance is too low. Landlords charge you penalties because your rent is late. You buy cheap shoes every year because you can't afford high quality ones that last. Gravity pins you firmly to the ground. That is why I say the first $20,000 is the hardest. It's like walking through quicksand. Every time you pull one foot out, the other sinks deeper. Charlie Munger has a famous quote, "The first $100,000 is a bitch," but that was by the standards of decades ago. In today's economic environment, for an ordinary working class person, I believe the true psychological threshold is $20,000. Until you save this $20. No so-called investment strategy can actually help you. Don't think about stock dividends. Don't think about compound interest curves. Because when your principal is nearly zero, 100%, return is still zero at this stage. The money you earn from investing wouldn't even be enough to buy a hamburger. This is a dark tunnel. Many young people walk in this tunnel for years only to find themselves still running in place. So they despair. They start to believe that social mobility is dead. They start to believe that hard work is useless, and then they squander the little money they have trying to numb. They pain through consumption. But this is exactly where most people fail. What this video is about is not how to make you rich, but how to make you take off. We're going to talk about how to generate enough thrust to break out of this gravity. Well, because once you cross this $0 line, a miracle happens. The air gets thinner, the resistance drops, the gravity weakens. Suddenly, every bit of effort you put in before starts to return to you exponentially. But before we get there, you must recognize where you are right now. If your current savings are below this number, please turn off all distractions and put your phone on silent, because the next 50 minutes might be the most important physics lesson of your life. We are on the launch pad right now. The countdown begins. The psychological shift, birth of refusal power. Now let's assume you have climbed out of that gravity. Well, you have $20,000 sitting in your bank account. You haven't bought a Ferrari. You haven't moved into a mansion, and you look exactly the same as you did yesterday. But I can guarantee you, deep inside your brain, the chemistry has changed. This chapter is about the psychological shift. I call this change the birth of growth. Refusal power. Do you know why most people live like slaves in the workplace? It is not because they lack ability. It is because they lack the capital to say no. Let's run a comparative experiment. Imagine two young people sitting in the same office. Let's call them Jack and Mike. Their salary exactly the same and their skills are equal. The only difference is that Jack has zero savings or perhaps even $1,000 in credit card debt, while Mike has $20. Zero in cash. Now the boss walks into the office and makes an unreasonable demand. Maybe he asks them to work overtime on the weekend for free, or maybe asks them to sell a product that is clearly defective. What will Jack do? Jack's heart rate will accelerate and his cortisol levels will spike. His brain will instantly go into survival mode. He will think, if I refuse, the boss might fire me. If I lose my job, how will I pay rent next week? What about my car payment? Fear instantly hijacks his rationality. So even though Jack is completely unwilling inside, he will lower his head and submissively say yes. Boss, no problem. In that moment, Jack is not an independent individual. He is a person forced to sell his dignity because of financial fragility. Now look at Mike, has $20. This money is enough for him to live for 6 months to a year without any income when the boss makes the same demand. There are no sirens going off in Mike's brain. He will calmly evaluate the request. He can look the boss in the eye and calmly say, I don't think that is a good idea. Can we find another way? Or if the request truly crosses the line, he can even tell himself, even if I quit right now, I will be fine. You see, this is called refusal power. Mike didn't actually quit, but because he possesses the ability to walk away at any time, he holds the initiative at the negotiation table, But I always say, if you cannot walk away, you cannot negotiate that $20,000, essentially not money. It is body armor for your personality. Psychologists have long confirmed a brutal truth. Poverty lowers your IQ. There's a book called Scarcity, and the research in it shows that when a person worries about money all day, their cognitive bandwidth gets severely occupied. This constant anxiety is equivalent to a temporary drop in INEC of 13 to 14 points. That is worse than going a whole night without sleep. This explains why poor people often make a series of bad decisions. Why do you buy lottery tickets? Why do you take out payday loans? Why do you spend 2 hours waiting in line to save $2? It is not because you are stupid. It is because your brain is filled with the fear of survival, and you simply have no space left to make long-term plans when you possess $20,000. The most magical thing happens. Your cognitive bandwidth is released. You no longer need to worry about next week's grocery bill. So your brain starts to switch from survival mode to strategy mode. You begin to see things 3 months or even 3 years down the line. You will find that you become smarter at work, more confident in social interactions, and even your temper improves. This is not because you read some self-help. Off that survival alarm that has been screaming in your head, many people ask me, Warren, what is true wealth? True wealth is not how many yachts you can buy. It is waking up in the morning and being able to say, I can do whatever I want today, that $20. Zero is the admission ticket to this kind of freedom. Although it cannot buy a yacht, yet it has bought back the most expensive luxury in the world, your rationality and your dignity. So at this stage, even if your shoes have holes in them, even if you are driving a 15-year-old beat-up car, as long as you have that $20,000 in your account, psychologically, you are already far wealthier than those driving BMWs. But carrying massive car loans, you are no longer walking on a tightrope. You finally have a safety net beneath your feet. And only when you are not afraid of falling can you start attempting difficult maneuvers, such as thinking about how to get richer, the compound interest machine, critical mass. Welcome to Chapter 3. If I didn't talk a little bit about math, I wouldn't be Warren Buffett. But I promise you today's math class will not be boring because it relates directly to when you retire. In the last chapter, we talked about the psychological shift. Sure. Now we need to talk about the mathematical shift. The theme of this chapter is the official start of the compound interest machine Einstein called compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world, but most people fail to understand. Prerequisite for compound interest compounding requires critical mass, just like a nuclear reactor. If you don't have enough uranium, the reaction simply won't happen in the world of wealth. $20. Zero is that critical mass. Let's do a brutal comparative calculation. Assume you are a very smart investor. You are a genius in the stock market, and you can earn a 10% return a year. This is already extraordinary because most professional fund managers cannot achieve this. If you only have $1, zero in your hand, you worked hard researching for a whole year, read countless financial reports, beat the market, and earned 10%. What is the result? $100. What can a $100 do? Maybe you can take your partner out for a nice dinner or fill your gas tank twice, and then that $100 is gone. It makes no structural change to your quality of life. You still have to worry about next month's rent. Your investment return is swallowed up by the noise of life. This is why it's hard for the poor to get rich through us. Because when the base is too small, the snowball compounding simply cannot. Rolling now, let's see what happens when you possess $20,000. The same 10% return, 10% of $20,000 is $2,000. What does $2,000 mean for many ordinary families? This could be a whole month's salary or 2 full months of rent. This is not just a difference in numbers. This is a difference in nature. When your investment income can cover a major expense in your life, like automatically paying your rent or automatically paying your car loan, magic happens. You suddenly discover that you are no longer fighting alone. You have gained an invisible partner. This partner doesn't eat,
doesn't drink, doesn't
sleep, and has no emotions, but every year he faithfully earns back a month of freedom for you. I have a famous analogy. Life is like a snowball. The important thing is finding wet snow in a really long hill. That $20,000 is the first tight snowball core you have packed together. If you don't have this core, no matter how much snow you scatter on the hill, it will just be blown away by the wind. It will never gather together. Let's look at how this core rolls over the river of time. We will use a simple mathematical tool called the rule of 7 divides 72 by your annual rate of return. And that is the time it takes for your assets to double if you put this $20,000 into a standard index fund, assuming an annual return of 7 to 10%. This means every 7 to 10 years, your money automatically doubles. 20,000 becomes 40,000, 40,000, 40,000 becomes 80. 80 becomes 160, 160 becomes 320, 320 becomes 640. Please note during this process, you don't even need to deposit a single extra penny. As long as you don't touch it, as long as you let it roll down that long hill, by the time you retire this initially insignificant $20, zero will turn into a huge sum. This is why I say before you save $20,000, do not care about the rate of return. Many young people only have a few $1,000s, yet they are obsessed with options, cryptocurrencies, or those junk stocks that claim to multiply 10 times. Why? Because they feel their principal is too small, so a 10% return is meaningless. They want a 500% return. This is suicidal mathematical logic. Precisely because you look down on that 10%, you took the risk of a 100% loss, and as a result, your principal went to zero. You have to go back to the starting line and start carrying up bricks all over again. Mark my words, before $20,000. Your primary task is defense. It is accumulation. It is squirreling away every acorn like a squirrel. At this stage, the importance of principal far outweighs the rate of return. You must pack this first pile of wet snow tight through selling your labor in time and through an extremely frugal lifestyle. This is a purely physical process. There are no tricks to it. But once you have packed this snowball and placed it on the hill, the rules of gravity change. Before, gravity was hindering you from climbing up. Now, gravity starts helping you roll down. This is the turning point from being human-driven to capital-driven. Before this line, you work for money. After this line, money starts working for you. Although it is just an intern at first and doesn't earn much, it grows much faster than you can imagine. Now we arrive at the most dangerous, the reward trap and darkest chapter of this video. If the previous chapters were about how to climb out of the deep, well, this chapter is about how not to fall back in. I call this chapter the Great Filter in the Fermi Paradox. The Great Filter refers to a threshold in the evolutionary process that is extremely difficult to cross. The vast majority of life forms go extinct before this threshold. In the process of wealth accumulation, $20,000 is the great filter. Statistics tell us that many ordinary people actually have had $20,000 in savings at some point in their lives.
In savings at some point in their
Maybe even more than once, but why do the vast majority end up broke? Because they fail to pass through. This is a brutal psychological trap. When you have $20,000 in your hand, the temptation you face is 10. 0 times greater than when you had no money. This is what I call the reward trap. Think about it. You worked hard for 3 years, eating instant noodles every day, buying no new clothes, and finally saved up $20. At this moment, your brain generates a strong psychology of compensation that tells you, hey, you have worked so hard. You are a rich person. Now you should reward yourself. Coincidentally, at this very moment, your 10-year-old Toyota breaks down again. You walk past a car dealership and see a brand new shiny SUV. The down payment is exactly $20,000. The devil in your heart says, buy it. I have money. I can afford it. This is the moment the filter activates. Most people fall right here. They sign the check and drive that new car home. And that moment they feel incredibly proud. They feel like they have succeeded. But what I see is a different scene. I see a person who has personally killed the golden goose that just hatched that car you bought is not an asset. It is a liability. The second you drive it off the lot, it depreciates by 20%, even worse for the sake of this car. You have blown your newly established core of compound interest to smithereens. You haven't just returned to square one. You have taken on a new car loan, higher insurance premiums, and higher gas costs. The gravity well opens up again and sucks you back in, and this time, because you have tasted the pleasure of a new car, you can no longer endure the hardship of frugality. You may never get another chance to climb out in this lifetime, aside from your own desires. There is an external force trying to pull you down. Sociologists call this the crab bucket effect. If you put one crab in a bucket, they can crawl out. But if you put a group of crabs in a bucket, whenever one tries to crawl out, the crabs underneath will grab it with their claws and drag it back down. When you save $20,000, when you start refusing meaningless consumption, when you start talking about investing instead of gossip, your friends, colleagues, and even relatives will feel uncomfortable. They will say, what's the use of saving? Money is meant to be spent. They will say, look at that guy. He clearly has money, but still drives a junk car. What a miser. They mock you. Not because you were doing something wrong, but because your self-discipline highlights their indulgence subconsciously. They don't want you to pass through that filter, because that means you will enter a world they cannot reach. To pass this filter, you have to become a little weird. You have to get used to loneliness. You have to learn to enjoy the thrill of watching the numbers in your bank account grow rather than the thrill of watching your closet fill up. Charlie Munger and I have lived with such misunderstandings our entire lives. We drive ordinary cars, live in old houses, and eat hamburgers. Many people think we don't know how to enjoy life, but what they don't understand is that we enjoy the sense of security. We enjoy the sound of the compound interest machine humming day and night. So when you save $20,000, this is the most critical moment. This money will feel hot in your hand. You'll feel it pulsing in your pocket, begging you to spend it. You must resist this urge. You have to tell yourself, this money is not for rewarding my past. It is for purchasing my future. This is my seed. If you grind your seed into flour and eat it, you will never see a harvest in your life. This is the greatest test on the road to wealth. It is not a test of your earning ability, but a test of your sense of worthiness. Do you believe you are worthy of long-term freedom, or are you only worthy of short-term pleasure? Oh, if you can resist buying that car, if you can resist going on that expensive vacation, if you can say no to the crabs pulling you down, then congratulations, you have just passed the great filter. Now you are officially part of the top 5%. Congratulations, you have passed the great filter. Your $20,000 is still in your account. It hasn't turned into a depreciating SUV. Now we enter the phase of tactical execution, the specific blueprint, $20 to $100 strategy. A theme of this chapter is the specific blueprint from $20,000 to $100,000. Many people will ask me at this point, Warren, I have $20,000 now. Which magic stock should I buy? Should I chase the hottest trend that is skyrocketing? My answer is very simple, and it might seem boring to you if you try to use this $20. We need gamble on the next moonshot. You have basically already lost at this stage. What you need to do is not gamble, but position yourself. We need to carve up this precious seed capital. We need to divide it into two parts, the bulletproof vest and the soldiers. First, you need to take $5,000 to $10,000 and put it into a high-yield savings account or buy the safest government bonds. This money is your bulletproof vest. This money is absolutely untouchable. It is not for investing. It is for buying a good night's sleep. You should treat it as your private insurance company when your car breaks down, when you get sick, or when you suddenly lose your job. This money will rush to the front lines and block the bullets of life. Only when you have this layer of body armor do you dare to hold on for the long term on the investment battlefield. Many people lose money in the market, not because the market is, but because they didn't have a bulletproof vest when the market crashed by. 30% they happened to need cash urgently, so they were forced to cut their flesh and exit at the lowest point. That is the stupidest way to die. So the first $10,000 must be in cash equivalents. The remaining 10 to $15,000 are your soldiers for the vast majority of ordinary people who possess no insider information and no professional analytical skills. I have only one piece of advice. Do not try to find the needle in the haystack. You should buy the entire haystack. Look for those low-cost index funds that track the entire broad market. Send your soldiers out and let them occupy the economic territory of the entire country. You don't need to study candlestick charts, and you don't need to listen to rumors. You just need to let them stay there and harvest the dividends of the entire economies. Growth for you, as long as humanity is progressing and as long as businesses are creating profits, this portion of your assets will slowly inflate over time. However, this is not enough simply relying on this $10-something thousand to snowball in the market. While it will make you rich is too slow. You need a turbocharger. This brings me to the second point, the utilization of asymmetric risk. When you are broke, you cannot afford any risk. But when you have $20 of zero as a cushion, you are qualified to play a game called asymmetric risk. What is asymmetric risk? It means your downside loss is limited, but your upside gain is